Happy October 1st to all of our Midwest Horror Network listeners. This is Brandon, along with Mark, David, and Zach. All four of us are here during this wonderful time of year where we all worship ghosts and pretend to be devils.
Pretend?
Pretend.
Yes, Zach, pretend.
That's adorable.
No, Zach's actually Satan.
But yeah,
Satanist.
so today we're here to talk about the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. This year, unless there are any production delays that we're not aware of at this time, because we are recording long in advance for this, this year will be the 31st Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode.
Whoa, whoa.
And since there are 31 days in October, we're going to do one a day, starting with today, October 1st, the very first Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode. Before we start, since this is our first episode, we want to talk about a little bit about our personal histories with The Simpsons. Are you guys fans, not fans, casual fans?
Not a fan.
I definitely am a fan of The Simpsons. Especially the Treehouse of Horror is one of my favorite things to look forward to during the year when I was a kid. Especially, growing up poor as well and didn't have cable. So things that, I was always looking forward to was Sunday nights and, watching The Simpsons. In particular, obviously, the Halloween specials are definitely my favorites.
I bet if I had
episodes for sure.
I bet if I had to rank this, it'd probably be 4 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. It'd be Brandon at number 4, David at number 3, me at number 2, and then Zach at number 1. For everybody's love of The Simpsons versus being I'm a casual fan, but I mean, I've always said that The Simpsons, has a lot of stuff going on. It's a lot of episodes, a lot of content, for obvious reasons, and I have several friends that are very into Simpsons, including 2 of them that are in this room. And most of the time, I enjoy Simpsons. However, every once in a while, the way I feel about Simpsons is the same way I feel about South Park. It has a lot of good stuff, a lot of okay stuff, but it also has some stuff that, like, when it hits hard, and it's really effective. And I go, oh my God, this is hilarious. But as of being, like, an extreme fan, no, very casual. Very, very casual.
For me, it's just, I don't find it that funny. It's quite boring most of the time. Yeah, of course, it'll have those moments where it's like, that was funny. But those are very few and far between, and I would much rather watch Family Guy because that show is absolutely fucking hilarious, especially the early years.
It's probably like around the time I stopped really watching The Simpsons. Is like as soon as like the first season of Family Guy came along, I started really getting into that type of comedy. So I mean, yeah. Yeah,
I am a lifelong fan of The Simpsons. You can blame my Uncle Jim on my mother's side of the family on that. He got me and my brother on them with some of the VHS tapes that he had of like season 1 and season 2 episodes.
In case you were wondering how much of a fan he actually is, there is a Lego Simpsons home right here on top of the table while we are podcasting right now as we speak.
Yep, I just finished building it yesterday.
He's also wearing a shirt with skeletons of each one of the family members sitting on their couch.
Yep.
Didn't I buy that for you for your birthday?
Yeah, this is a birthday present from Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, which you'll see this design in a later Treehouse of Horror episode, but I won't say which one. You don't have that much long of a wait for it, but you will see it.
I mean, because I can't sleep at night thinking about that, Brandon. I mean, I'm like, gosh, when am I going to see the episode of Treehouse Horror that's on Brandon's T-shirt? I wake up in cold sweats in the middle of the night. Oh, God, thank you for that relief.
It's not that big a deal, Mark.
He needs to be consoled.
I need to know.
Mark, calm down.
Yeah, calm down.
Mark, calm your tits!
But yeah, lifelong fan of The Simpsons, and of course, since I love horror as well, the Treehouse of Horror episodes are basically, they're a yearly tradition for me. Even during years where I wasn't watching The Simpsons week to week, I still made sure that I did watch their Halloween special for that year. Because even the bad ones are still at least minorly interesting, which there are some pretty week ones later on in the series. But for the most part, they're a highlight of the October season for me. I also collect some of the Treehouse of Horror comics, which those from 1985 to 2017, I think it was. They were just like an annual comic that they released in like September or October. Each issue also with 3 stories, much like with the episodes. But there's also, they have a lot fewer restrictions on what they can do, and they can get really out there with the art styles, and it gets really out there sometimes. But today we are here to talk about the very first Treehouse of Horror episode, their very first Halloween special.
It's actually kind of funny because I actually remember seeing this episode when I was younger. I remember actually because I think my stepbrothers, Jeremy in particular, my stepbrother was really into The Simpsons at the time. And like David, we didn't really have cable, but we had the bunny ears, so we can still catch, stuff that was on Fox. And I remember like briefly walking into it, especially the 3rd episode, which David will talk about. I remember actually seeing that. What year was this, Brennan?
This would have been 1990.
Okay, then obviously this was obviously I wasn't born yet, but this is obviously a rerun from them. But I do remember watching this particular episode as a kid.
Yeah.
And then years later, reading what the episode's based off of. So yeah, this is kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I imagine that I'll probably, as we watch more of these, I'll probably remember times that I watched this when it was actually on cable way back in the day.
Yeah. So yeah, let's start with it. So Treehouse of Horror is season 2, episode 3. And it begins with Marge Simpson coming out from behind a red curtain, like on a stage, warning parents not to let their young children watch the episode because it's supposedly very scary, and it's best to tuck in your children early tonight rather than write us angry letters in the morning.
Yeah. It's funny how applicable that is by today's standards.
Just update it to the comments section in YouTube, and you get yourself a party.
Yeah.
It's kind of worse now. With that, yeah.
Oh, way worse.
Cancel them!
Which that introduction is a bit of a spoof of the very beginning of the 1931 Frankenstein movie with Boris Karloff. They do have a guy come out and warn people that you're going to see some shocking stuff in this movie. Which the creators of The Simpsons did treat this like a serious Halloween special. They wanted less comedy and more horror type stuff in it. Because they do see the Halloween specials as a way to go crazy with their animation and their stories and everything.
I could see that. I could see how they took it serious, especially like when we're gonna talk about individual segments. There's 3 of them. How the first segment is focused on more of a gore with more of the blood, when the second one's more of like sci-fi, when the third's more suspenseful. So you can really feel that they did take this.
Cover your bases pretty decently well in this.
You have a good mix of stories in this one, and this is actually the only Halloween special where they had a separate director for each segment. After this one, all the Halloween specials just had one director, but this one, each one had a different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it explains a lot, especially with the soundtrack for each one too. It's very different.
Yeah. Marge comes out, introduces the show, and then we go into the opening, which this was a very basic opening of just the title coming into the sky, Simpsons Halloween Special, and we go through a graveyard that has some tombstones in it, which they only did the tombstones for like the first handful of these Halloween specials, but the tombstones we see in this episode are Ezekiel Simpson, Ishmael Simpson, Cornelius V. Simpson, Garfield, the Grateful Dead, Casper the Friendly Boy.
Really?
Well, you wouldn't bury a ghost.
Fair.
Elvis.
Damn it, Simpsons, you got me with logic.
For once.
See, you got me.
Elvis, Your Name Here, Paul McCartney.
I laughed at that one. Same here.
Disco, because Disco is dead.
Disco's always been dead. Whether people want to admit it or not, it's always been dead.
And finally, Violence on TV.
Oh.
Disco was dead when Kiss started doing it.
Yeah.
The,
So
no, there were other people that did. Wait. When at least did the disco duck. That's when things really got bad. I really or worse, the Star Wars disco.
We're not going to talk about that, Mark.
Anyway, go on, Brent.
So then we enter a scene of Homer returning from trick-or-treating, and he looks up at the treehouse where Bart and Lisa and Maggie are, and he's just like, let's see what the kids are up to. And Lisa and Bart are telling each other scary stories. Lisa basically finishes up retelling what I understand to be essentially the movie When a Stranger Calls, with a babysitter in a house, and there's some stalker calling her, and she's calling the cops to trace the call, and they're like, the call is coming from inside the house, but it was too late.
Oh.
We've heard the story 100 times.
Everybody's
Yeah,
heard
no.
that story 100 times.
Yeah.
The people that created that story originally heard it 100 times.
Yeah. Even though it was the 90s, I'm pretty sure that story had been done to death, especially at that point.
Yeah.
And it would only be recreated, 10 years later? I know they did a modernization of the movie, somewhere in the 2000s.
I do feel like they did do a remake.
They
of
did.
When
I
a
remember
Stranger
seeing it.
Calls. Yeah.
The original creators of When a Stranger Calls are like, I'd already heard about that story, but they said, "Oh, we came up with it." No, you didn't.
Bullshit.
It's been around forever.
So yeah, they're sitting in the treehouse telling each other scary stories, which is the only Treehouse of Horror episode that actually uses the freaking treehouse.
Because logic.
Well, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So then Bart says he has a scary story for Lisa, which goes into our first segment, Bad Dream House. Mark, tell us about Bad Dream House.
So, Bad Dream House is essentially a make fun of the movie Poltergeist. The entire Simpsons family finds a new house to live in. Homer got a very cheap deal, and then they quickly find out why it was a cheap deal. It is, of course, haunted by poltergeists, and every cliche of poltergeist comes out: the bleeding walls, the talking voice, which they promptly ignore, the bleeding walls that Marge completely walks past, and several other voices that come up and tell them to murder each other. And then eventually they find the Indian burial ground in the basement. With some very, very funny, very funny tombstone titles there. My favorite was Crazy Horse right next to Not So Crazy Horse. And then Tonto was down there as well.
Tonto was fucking hilarious.
The gravestones for the ancient Indian burial ground were Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, Mahatma Gandhi.
The Simpsons, man. The Simpsons original trolls.
Dude,
They're the
so
original
much.
trolls. Dude.
Pocahontas, Geronimo, Tonto, Sacagawea, and, as Mark said, Not So Crazy Horse.
I actually thoroughly enjoyed this episode. It was funny, and actually, and we are going to talk about spoilers in this. I don't see any reason why not. Marge actually just freaks out at the end of the episode and actually talks to the house and says, "You know what? Stop fucking talking to us like that. Why are you talking to us like that?" And then and he's like, "Well, for reasons." And they're like, "What? Why can't we just live together in harmony?" And the house quickly realizes that he never fucking thought of that before, and he says, "Give me a minute to think about it." And then the whole family walks out, and then the house implodes on itself because they'd rather die than live with the Simpsons. And actually, I laughed quite a bit at this episode, especially when Bart walked up to the house and said, "Hey, make the walls bleed again. I want to see it bleed again." He's like, "I'm not doing that. I'm not here for your entertainment." And like a bunch of funny jokes, the books flying around, the Indian burial ground in the basement.
I like the vortex when
Yeah.
Homer throws in the
yeah.
apple.
Don't throw your trash in our universe.
And I like the sound effect that the apple makes when it disappears. That
That was great. And a little bit Marge comes out to break up. She's like, "Listen, we've had a lot of problems in our family, but we've never resorted to a knife fight before. This is
I think that was the funniest.
I'm like, you know what? That's a pretty good point.
I think Lisa had a meat cleaver. Homer had an axe.
Maggie
Maggie
had
had
that
a
knife,
switchblade.
When they were all laughing and Maggie's just holding her pacifier and the knife and she's laughing, that 2-second frame is freaking creepy.
It
Maggie
is.
just like laughing murderous.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of other episodes about Maggie being a murderer
just like
and other issues that
this
come
is
up
where
later.
it started.
This is definitely where
Oh,
it
nice.
started.
With a shot of like Maggie's like head just like spinning
Oh
around.
yeah.
Pull the Exorcist thing. It's like.
Yeah.
So that like, and there's so many like cool subtle lines in this. You know, like you know, you hear "get out," and then Marge's like, "What's that?" He's like, "I don't know. It's probably just the house settling." What?
You need to murder them, Bart. Are you my conscience?
He's like,
Yes.
As the walls move out and in. It's
The,
just like, okay.
Oh, it was fun. Marge, where are you? I'm in the kitchen.
Of course, Homer doesn't want to leave. He's like, yeah, sleep on it.
I just love that he's on the phone with the realtor and he's like, it's like, I do not recall that. You never told me this is on an Indian burial ground. He's claiming that he told me like 5 times.
He says he mentioned it 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
He turns around casually. He may have mentioned it 5 or 6 times.
Click. Son
of a bitch!
The last line of this is actually just great though, and I already mentioned it, but Lisa's like the house it would rather die than actually live with the Simpsons. It's kind of hard not to take that personally.
We kind of feel rejected right now.
We kind of feel a little rejected. I can't help but feel rejected. Obviously very short, but it was very fun. I'm always it is The Simpsons, so I am like expecting a comedy. And that was the funniest one to me of all the other ones. I can also tell, considering how the longevity of The Simpsons, I can tell that this is the first one. It's not all there, but like I can see what's on the horizon. Like, and I think it's my biggest thing with this episode, not just my little tidbit, but all the rest of them as well. Like it's good, but it's not great. But I can see what's coming next. I can see what it's going to be leading to. And of course, I'm sure there's other episodes that are not as good or they're bad or whatever. But I know that there's some really, because this is a very famous section of The Simpsons. And being a Simpsons fan, so I can see the direction that they're headed. And of course, I dig Poltergeist, so it was fun to watch them make fun of it and poke some fun at it. It was pretty great. And it was overall a pretty fun episode. Or a section of the episode. It was fun.
Yeah, David, what did you think of Bad Dream House?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. It had its moments. So definitely fun.
Yeah. Zach?
I thought this one was really good. I enjoyed this one. I laughed and, bloody walls. I could definitely sympathize with Bart. Show me the bloody walls again! No! Yes! No! Yes!
Not here for your entertainment.
Yes, you are, damn it!
Especially like
he's like, we own you.
Especially like the knife fight. I still find it hilarious with Maggie just with the switchblades.
Carrying it like Rambo crawling to her destination. It's like, holy shit!
Dude,
Everyone's just like, I'm sorry.
I do have more respect for Marge as a mom. Just like how she handled all those situations were just a total way that a mom would handle that.
My name is not Ma'am, it is Marge.
I just love the house though. The house never fucking thought about actually living in. And Lisa's like, are you pushing us away because you're not afraid? You're too afraid to love someone else. He's like, oh, I need some time to think about this.
That's when he decided he'd rather die.
Yeah, pretty much.
Suicide.
Suicide by implosion.
I really enjoyed this one too. I think it was a good first segment from the Halloween episodes. I really like the references to Poltergeist. It also has some references to Amityville Horror in there with the bleeding walls.
It's got a little bit of The Shining too.
A little bit with Homer and the Axe.
Homer and the Axe, yeah.
Which we'll be talking about The Shining in a later episode.
I'm sure.
I like the design of the house, which is basically just the Psycho house from Psycho.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I didn't even realize that till now.
And then before we move on, I do want to mention that there is a guest voice in this episode, and it's the only time where a guest voice is present in all 3 stories, and that's James Earl Jones.
I was gonna.
Yes.
And in this one, he just played a mover that Homer gave a tip that was only $1 to him, and he's like, "I'm glad there's a curse on this place." But yeah, I thought this was a very good starting segment for the Halloween specials. So after the Bad Dream House, we return to Bart and Lisa in the treehouse. Lisa is not impressed with the story, and Bart does the severed finger in a box gag, and Maggie just starts sucking his finger. He's grossed out by the baby spit. And then he goes into our second story, Hungry Are the Damned. Zach, tell us about Hungry Are the Damned.
So, Hungry Are the Damned starts off with the Simpsons family trying to have, I assume, an outdoor barbecue. And Homer is putting way too much lighter fluid into the grill, which later is followed by what can only be described as a non-nuclear explosion.
Freaking mushroom cloud
A
enveloping
mushroom
the
cloud
neighborhood.
enveloping the entire city for all of, 2 seconds? Poof!
I mentioned to Zach, I was like, oh, that's how Wes cooks.
It makes it work. But yeah, then an alien spacecraft comes over and abducts the entire Simpsons family, and it takes 2 beams instead of 1 to capture Homer because he's so fucking fat.
That was pretty great.
Yeah. And then the aliens, they start giving the entire Simpsons family food. They're like, here, eat. We're going to take you to some place called Gazorpathorpe 5.
Rigel 4.
Rigel 4. He, of course, would know the name, because I don't. Yeah. And there's going to be an excellent feast, and you're the main guest of honor. They continue feeding the entire family. Then Lisa finds a book, How to Cook Humans. She brings it over to the family. She's like, look, they're trying to fatten us so they can eat us. And then it becomes this blowing the dust off the book contest for a good minute and a half, where it's how to cook 4 humans. Then it's how to cook 40 humans. Then it's how to cook 440 humans. Jesus Christ, how long is this going to go on? At the end of the day, the aliens weren't really trying to cook the humans. They were trying to just treat them like the ultimate guests of honor, gods, pleasure beyond your wildest dreams. They drop them back off on their home planet because, well, they're essentially dicks. And they're just rubbing it in. It's like, you would have had the greatest pleasures. Greater pleasure than love, greater pleasure than fun, but you fucked it up. And then they just leave. There were monsters on that ship, but it was us. Because Lisa has to make a quote at the end of every episode.
Of course.
Yeah, I like how I think Marge had 2 great lines at the end of this one. It was like,
Lisa, you're too smart for your own good.
and G, for a superior race, they really hold a grudge.
Yeah.
This was actually, there were some pretty funny parts in this. It's just with the Pong joke and everything else. Like Marge and Homer were like, oh, we did that on our first date.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Raise your hand if you perfected interstellar travel.
My favorite is like he's going through the channels. Like, look at this TV. Look at this big TV, and we have every channel in the galaxy.
We have over 1,000
Do you
channels.
have HBO? No, that will cost extra.
Nobody wants to pay for HBO.
I love how that joke was funny in 1990 and it's still funny in 2020.
Yep. It is literally a 20-year-old joke
relevant.
and it is still relevant
Still
and
relevant.
hilarious.
30-year-old
30-year-old joke.
Oh, Jesus
That's a
Christ.
30-year-old joke and it's still... That's when you know a joke is good, when it's still
yeah.
funny 30 years later. And still relevant 30 years later.
Still-
Relevant and hilarious.
Because I have Amazon Prime, right? So like, you obviously get video with it. So they have their individual channels, and you have to pay extra for HBO.
Oh, you want to watch the HBO movie? Yeah, pay extra.
So you have
Fuck
to
you.
pay, so you're paying what, like $6-7 for Prime, and then you have to pay like $7 or $8 extra for the HBO channel.
It's such an extra thing. You're like, everybody goes there to get the next day delivery. They're like, here's a streaming service that will just toss you.
Really
there's
is.
like 5 movies and a couple TV shows. Like that's
They update their streaming list like every month. Right now they're on a fucking Van Damme binge. I watched
Yeah,
like
I've
5
seen it.
Van Damme movies this month.
Dude, it's
Sport.
literally like the Radio Shack of fucking streaming services.
Yeah,
If you can't find it on all the other ones, just check out Amazon Prime. It'll probably be there.
that's a perfect
Like,
comparison.
I was
They're really sad.
I was trying to find a bunch of like old episodes of All That. That's where they're at on Amazon.
Hold up, you watched all that?
Yeah, of course I watch all that. Some of it holds up, some of it doesn't. Some of it I question Nickelodeon's decisions about putting that on the air.
Well, look, Nickelodeon didn't give a
Nickelodeon.
fuck back in the
Oh
day.
man, did they
Oh,
not give
no.
a fuck? Oh my god.
They
did
wanted to
not
put
give-
Ren and Stimpy and Invader Zim on. They clearly didn't give a damn what else went on their fucking network.
Yeah, they. Oh my god. Yeah, there's some sketches on there. I went. Oh, you said that.
That happened.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one too. Like, I don't think there was a single bad one in these three, and like they're all very solid. And one, I don't feel one really rises above the others or sinks below the others. But yeah, and this
I'll
one's
agree with that last statement.
this one's really notable because it's the first appearance of the aliens King and Kodos, who appear in every Treehouse of Horror
Yes.
episode
Oh.
ever. Sometimes they're part of the stories, other times they're just kind of shoehorned in, and other times they're in between.
And then James Earl Jones voiced one of the aliens
Yes,
as well.
Serac the Preparer,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
apparently in order to pronounce his name correctly, he would have to rip out your tongue, even though we just said his name.
Yeah, there's an interesting little lapse in logic on their part.
Context.
The
And yeah, to do the drooling in Serac's voice, he would actually chew on a cookie when he recorded his lines.
that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Really?
Nice little tidbit.
Yeah.
And of course, the big reference in this episode is the cookbook, which is, how to cook humans, which is a huge callback to the season 3 Twilight Zone episode To Serve Man, where the big twist is basically there are these aliens that come to Earth and it's like, hey, we'll take you guys to our planet where you're gonna get like pleasures beyond pleasures, you're gonna be treated like gods. And then the ambassador like leaves behind this book in an alien language at the UN, and they finally decode it, and it's like, the book To Serve Man, it's a cookbook.
Ugh. Shit.
Yeah. Which also space dust.
Yep.
I like how there's this little flap in his like glass panel that he can open just to blow dust off of shit. It's like interesting how that was just conveniently placed there for that specific purpose.
Love the one alien though. He's like, I slaved over the stove for hours trying to serve you.
They were
human."
so emotionally battered by the fact that they thought they were going to eat them.
They set that episode up very well though for that payoff.
Oh yeah,
towards the end, so
very much so. The
just
yeah.
with insinuating like the aliens are gonna eat the Simpsons from like right from the beginning. As soon as they reveal the feast for them to eat, it's like, all
Yeah,
right,
it's like
we
there's
know
that-
what's gonna
There's
probably
that
gonna
one
happen.
shot of them removing the platters. You
Yeah.
can see Homer and Marge's heads.
And then they realize like, wait a minute, you guys are not eating with us. Oh well, we have a feast when we get back home. You'll be there.
You could say you're going to be the guests of honor.
Jesus.
That's what I would have said if I was one of the Simpsons. I'd be like, you know what? Don't laugh creepy if you don't want me to
Yeah.
think something
Yeah.
sinister is
Yeah.
going on.
What the hell did you expect us to think?
Don't laugh like a psychopath and then expect me everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah, I think we all liked that one.
That was fun.
It was good.
It was good. It was good.
And then we return to the treehouse once more, and this time Lisa's going to tell Bart a story, and she is reading from what Bart points out as a school book. And
Don't worry, Bart. You won't
you
learn
won't learn
anything.
anything.
I was like, all right, that was pretty fun.
And this brings us to our third and final story of the episode, The Raven. David, tell us about The Raven.
So the Raven's a take on obviously Edgar Allan Poe's story or poem, The Raven. So this is narrated by James Earl Jones, of course, which helps a lot with the mood of this particular segment, which is really eerie. I mean, the story and poem itself is eerie, but when you add the narration of James Jones's voice in there, man, it creates a freaking mood. This episode is obviously more supernatural compared to the first two, which is first one more gore, second sci-fi. So this is more a suspenseful supernatural episode.
More
so,
of a mood piece.
yeah, more of a mood piece. A lot more use with audio, just to continue on with the mood. What else? Definitely my favorite segment out of all the three ones. So, what else? So the story is basically about the man trying to remember his wife who passed away, Lenore. Hears a few knocks, and pounds on the door. He goes and he opens the door. There's nobody there. And then all of a sudden, the raven, shows up.
Dude, every time somebody describes Edgar Allan Poe, all I can think of is that fucking scene in Happy Gilmore when he's like, hey, "I'm gonna make you pay. I'll see you another day. Yeah, I'm gonna go by the bay, make things out of clay.
Yeah.
I just may."
Yeah, so
Oh my god.
that describes the poem for sure. With the constant use of the word
You're
nevermore.
not wrong.
No, absolutely not. So
I'm not going to get mad at you for speaking your mind, but
Just like that meme, like, how can you say something so truthful and so controversial at the same time?
How's that controversial?
I know, I'm just being silly.
So the raven shows up, and the only word he can speak is nevermore, and the man's already surprised that the raven can speak, and all of a sudden starts imagining, I guess, or thinks that he's seeing angels or whatever, and he thinks it's a sign from God that he has to forget Lenore, basically, is what the story is, and so he thinks that the raven is evil and is trying to make him forget Lenore. So he, basically has a fit and tries to kick the raven out and is trying to go crazy, and he really doesn't want to forget his wife, but he knows that he has to move on and doesn't really want to accept that he has to move on. So, yeah, that was basically it.
Nice.
That's the story, but I mean, what completes that was the narration, the audio, or the soundtrack for that particular segment, the supernatural aspect to it, with the raven actually speaking, itself is amazing and supernatural.
I really like how Bart is redesigned as
Yeah,
the
Bart was-
Raven. You have Marge as Lenore, and the portrait of her has to take
Yeah.
up 2 frames because her hair is so tall.
The Eat My Shorts thing was fun.
I was gonna say that was probably the
Yeah.
funniest part of that whole bit was just where he, instead of nevermore, he's just like, eat my shorts.
Yeah, they really thought about this segment for sure, especially like the way there were, the frames and everything in this segment. It felt like it was shot like an Alfred Hitchcock kind of film.
Yeah.
So,
To take a serious note into something literature, I'm not a fan of this one, but I'm a big Edgar Allan Poe fan, but The Raven's my least favorite of all of his works.
oh really?
I think it's probably one of the most overrated of all of his stuff. Everyone always it's constantly talked about all the fucking time, and I'm like, dude, he's got other shit.
Yeah.
Like
But
it's
let me
like-
ask you this: what did you think of the 1960s Roger Corman adaptation of The Raven, starring Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, Peter Lorre, and as the romantic lead, Jack Nicholson?
I am
Hang on, what?
extremely disappointed that I've never seen that.
It's about 2 rival magicians. Like, it has
Really?
the title in common, and a raven flies into Vincent Price's home at the beginning, and that's where the similarities end.
This sounds amazing.
It's like they mixed like The Raven and The Prestige 30
Yeah,
years
it's
before.
basically the 1960s Prestige, directed by Roger Corman.
That's
and Jack Nicholson is the love interest?
yeah,
the
What?
yeah.
Okay.
wow. Now I need to see that.
This is screenplay by Richard Matheson.
Jesus.
Wow.
Not my particular like. I'm Annabelle Lee by the Sea. Tale of Two Hearts. The what's the one with the knocking?
Telltale Heart.
The Telltale Heart. That's
The
actually
Pendulum.
Telltale Heart is probably my favorite.
No.
My favorite of all time. But yeah, I was never like. I mean, it's good. I understand it. But I'm like,
I like The Raven because it's. I mean, most of his stories are depressing, so I'm not
Oh,
really.
it's crazy depressing. Crazy depressing.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I love The Raven because it's depressing. Well, most of his stuff.
Annabelle Lee is about is about his cousin.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing. He married his cousin, whose name was Annabelle Lee. The Annabelle Lee Down by the Sea lived, to whatever. It's literally about his dead cousin that he married. The
Okay.
super
fun.
interesting. The he's an interesting dude. He was a very
So this third segment is not your favorite, correct? The first one was.
Oh yeah, not my favorite, but I think that has to do with two reasons. One, The Raven's not my favorite, and two, I think I was definitely expecting a lot more comedy because it is The Simpsons. And again, I have not very brief glances of watching the Treehouse Horror episodes. I hadn't really sat down and watched them, so I didn't really know what they were all about. That's why I can see what's happening next. But I kind of wanted to laugh a little bit more. I kind of wanted it to be a parody on The Raven, and it really wasn't a parody on The Raven. It was The Raven.
I mean, it had its moments with
It had
Marge's portrait.
Yeah, it had its
but
moments, but I wanted a little bit more parody.
I think it's because of what Brandon said. There was 3 different writers, 3 different directors.
Yeah.
So that was basically, I think, why.
Yeah, and I probably think because I'm not that much of a fan of The Raven, I wanted more parody of The Raven because of how I feel about The Raven.
Yeah.
That might be a personal thing. I think it was the least funny of the two, of the 3.
Just because I think maybe that director, what was the director for that third segment?
I
You remember?
don't know
Why Brandon looks that up?
I
think his,
I tried looking up earlier, but I couldn't find
Really?
a correlation between which director did which
That
segment.
sucks.
Oh.
So
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's really what his purpose was, incorporating more of an eerie feel than
Yeah,
more
I-
adding any of the comedy. 'Cause
I
since
do
the
think
first-
they took this one a lot more seriously, and I think the lack of or the less comedy in this one was by design. Because they did want, like I said earlier, they did want to take the Halloween horror aspect seriously for this episode. And for 1990s animation, there was nothing like this.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely give him props for incorporating humor on literature and doing something in literature and animation. That was especially for 1990, that was unheard of for them to be doing stuff like that. So I respect
it was
the
unheard
innovation.
of to do that. It was unheard of to they were basically doing a whole throwback to the EC Comics Tales from the Crypt thing of 3 stories in one episode essentially.
Oh, yeah.
This was, even though there are plenty of stories and episodes in the Treehouse of Horror lineup that have surpassed this one, this was freaking groundbreaking for the day.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I could say there's a few animations out there that I love. Of course, Family Guy, South Park is my favorite. American Dad, they have Halloween specials, and I think that The Simpsons, for me, for their Halloween specials, are my favorite.
Yeah.
Out of all of them.
That would
Just because of the way they set up with the segments, individual stories.
That would be,
And it is a tradition.
Yeah, it is.
not and to completely throw this off the wall, but that actually would be a cool podcast episode for later. Is best Halloween episodes of sitcoms. Talk about Home Improvement and all the Community.
That's
they
actually
did,
not a bad
when
idea.
they did
That's a
all
good
the different ones.
'Cause sometimes it could be serious, sometimes it could be really cheesy.
Yeah, I really like this one too. Zach, what did you think of The Raven?
Boring as fuck.
Oh,
I was a little nicer.
Yeah. To each their own. on
I
that
swear to
part.
God, it's like watching A24 before A24. Nothing fucking happened.
okay, come on. It wasn't that bad.
It was not
Don't
that
say
bad.
things
It
you
was
can't take
so
back.
boring. I'm like, is anything gonna happen funny or cool? No, it's just gonna be the funniest thing that happened was Bart just popping in as a little crow saying, "Eat my shorts, butts." That was it. Everything else, I'm like, first off, I'm an uncultured, illiterate swine. I hate that language bullshit from what the hell, Leonardo? Who the fuck was that playmaster back in the Renaissance?
Shakespeare?
That asshole.
He was Leonardo DiCaprio. No, he was not there.
I think my
It was
soul
not
just
there.
threw up a little bit in its mouth.
And I hate that language bullshit. I don't know. It's just
That's how they wrote that. I can
I
imagine
love it.
Zach back in the 1800s be like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't stand the way they spoke in the 1600s.
All right, hold on.
And then there's Zach in the 1600s. I
Zach,
can't stand the
hold
way
on.
they spoke in the
Hold on.
1400s.
I'm gonna give you and I'm gonna do this briefly. I'm gonna give you a appreciation for just a little bit of appreciation for Shakespeare. he invented like 200 words that were never around before, and like
Come hither thee, ye the pea to the titty.
But I want you to understand this. Understand this one thing. The set of balls in this guy to just be writing something and be like, you know what? There's no word for this. Fuck it. I'm just gonna make it up.
He also wrote a poem about an erection.
And that's true, which is also great. But like for the balls on this guy just to say, there's no word for this. I'm just gonna fucking make it up. And then everyone went along with it. No one questioned him. They just like he said, I'm gonna make this up, and everyone's like, all right, that sounds cool. Yeah. I don't know another person in history who was at that kind of balls just to say, this is what this means now. Nice. He just decided because it was.
Can we put a pause?
Because it was in my way. That particular word was in my way that it didn't exist before. Now it fucking exists. So I have to give respect to a guy that just make this shit up. Just to keep the flow going.
If that's actually true, fine.
That's
100%
true.
Regardless, it still sounds fucking stupid.
You know what? I'm gonna toss you like No Fear Shakespeare, and then you'll understand why we're still talking about this asshole like 200 years after the fact.
I just can't wait till we've all passed on and we're looking down on Earth from heaven 300 years from now. And there's going to be some version of Zach listening to this podcast. He's like, I cannot stand the way they talked back then.
You know, I'm not 100% cultured, but these guys are fucking ridiculous. It sounds so stifled. No Fear Shakespeare, actually what it does is it's a thicker book than the plays. And on the left-hand side, it has the Shakespeare language.
Oh, no.
And
I'm
then the right-hand side.
Books. I had to read like
the
3 of his books in high school. There was, of course, the Romeo and Juliet story, which I still think is so stupid.
It's a 3-day fling between teenagers that results in 3 people's deaths. That's what the fuck that story is about.
It's so stupid.
Just in case anybody needed. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Romeo and Juliet. Like, I am a fan of Shakespeare, but like I'm not a fan of that because that's everybody says, oh, it's all about romance. No, it's about the dangers of impulsive action.
Yeah.
That's
someone you just met. You said 3 days, right?
It's
someone you just met 2 days ago is faking their death, and you're gonna kill yourself, therefore causing this other person to. What?
It was the very first piece of fiction to glamorize teen suicide.
Yeah, it was. Dude, there's so many, like, and what's another one you read?
Macbeth.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I like Othello.
Dude, Macbeth is like the most fucked play.
Yeah.
And it's also extremely cursed play. It's like it's a tradition in theater. You're not allowed to. Don't be an asshole. You're not allowed. You're not. Okay. You're not allowed to say. That's rule number 1 in theater. You're not allowed to say Macbeth in there because it brings bad luck upon the set. There's a lot of different. Seriously, 100%. You will be chastised by actors in a play. What?
What?
Jesus Christ!
They'll kick your ass, Zach.
So if I just walk onto a stage and say Macbeth,
have you seen Angry Thespians before?
Angry Thespian? What?
They will beat your fucking ass.
They will box step your ass out of the theater. No,
this is interesting. I've never heard this before.
It's actually there's actually a long history about people. It's called the Scottish play. You're supposed to call it the Scottish play. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a long history of people dying on stage during performances of this. And I not mean like in the background or in the crew. I mean fucking people dying on stage during this. Like platforms would drop on people. There's a lot of legends that it was one of Shakespeare's last plays, and he cursed the play, saying that that he didn't want anybody to perform this play besides him. There's also another legend that the witchcraft in the beginning is actually legitimate witchcraft that Shakespeare stole from a couple witches. He's like, I want to make it authentic.
But
also there's a very practical reason because it's also the Shakespearean play with the most swordplay. So it is prone to the most accidents, but there are a lot of legends around it and a lot of different things around it. But yeah, that is a very steep tradition in theater that you're not allowed to say Macbeth on stage. And actually, there's a whole ritual to cleanse. I'm not joking. You have to spin around 3 times, spit, yell an obscenity at the top of your lungs, go outside of the theater, do a lap around the theater, and then beg another actor to let you inside the theater again. That is a legitimate tradition among actors in the theater.
Note to self: don't say
There-
Macbeth in a theater. Holy crap!
And there is actually an episode of The Simpsons where they go to London and they see Ian McKellen about to perform Macbeth, and he talks about how it's a curse play, you can't say the name, and every time Homer says Macbeth, something happens to Ian McKellen.
Yeah,
You guys see
told
that
you.
episode.
So, but yeah, that's a legitimate thing. But yeah, Macbeth is also probably one of the best plays because it's the most fucked play. It's all about murder. It's a lot of murder in that fucking play. And what was the other one?
I don't remember what the hell the other one was. Those are the only two that I remember because those are the two most noteworthy. The other one was one of his other fucking bullshit ones that nobody gives a damn about.
There's like in between ones. It's
Yeah.
probably one of the historical plays that I never really gave a shit about.
Yeah.
Here's the thing with Shakespeare. Shakespeare is, you can't read it like a novel. You have to read it like a play.
Yeah.
You have to perform it. Like the flow of how it's done and how the language it rolls off. Like there's a lot of actions and you have to actually perform it to actually see it.
If anything, I wouldn't mind seeing them, just with the exception of Romeo and Juliet, because I truly think that story is just stupid.
I definitely
It's not romantic. It's
Dude,
like you said, it's impulse bullshit.
Dude, it's literally about two rival like families that it's literally like the two families are both like two gangs that hate each other and the two people fall in love with each other. I mean, it's crazy. Like literally, it's a perfect example of what happens when you have blind hatred and the consequences of blind hatred.
Yeah. And I had to watch both freaking movies too, which didn't
Oh,
help.
really?
Yeah.
You didn't have to perform it. Like some schools, like make you actually go on stage and perform that.
I would have refused.
So, like,
There's a bunch of things I would do. It's just like, no, this play is just no. Screw
Imagine
this. You
Zach
cannot
being
make me
in-
do this shit.
You know what's so
Being
funny
in
though? Is
Romeo
like
and
there's some roles that you would have a fucking ball playing. Man.
Oh, I'm sure I'd have a ball playing a lot of these roles.
Dude, actually, Tybalt
Tibble?
in
I like this name.
in Romeo and Juliet. I think that's Romeo's friend.
His name is Tibble?
He's just a sarcastic prick.
Sounds like me.
It's actually a fun role. He just light and air, but it also he has probably one of the best lines. Like right before he dies, he's like the line is I place a curse on both your houses, but basically he told his best friend, I hope all of you fucking die. I know it sounds flowerier in Shakespeare language, but his last words were, I hope both of you and both of your families fucking burn in hell. Fun stuff.
Fancy way of telling you.
Fancy
A
way
fancy way of saying fuck you.
off.
Yeah.
So anyway, about that diversion into Shakespeare.
That is Mark's whole rant about Shakespeare.
Sorry.
We got a theater lesson here today.
And Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven.
Yes.
So yeah, that's our last story. We then go back to the treehouse one more time. Homer's been listening to Bart and Lisa's stories the whole time. Bart is berating Lisa because the Raven wasn't scary at all. He says, well, it was written in 1845. People were probably scared a lot easier back then. To which he says, oh yeah, like when you look at Friday the 13th Part 1.
And I immediately looked at Zach when I saw that, and I'm like, oh!
And so yeah, Bart and Lisa go to bed. Homer is obviously scared. Bart, Lisa, and Maggie are sleeping with no problems at all. Homer doesn't want Marge to turn the light off, but she tells him it's only children's stories. They can't hurt you. She turns the light off, goes to sleep. And out the window, Homer sees a Bart-shaped raven that laughs. Credits.
Real credits.
So yeah, I've got a few categories for us to talk about after each episode. Before we get to that, just real quick, as a whole, what did you all think of this first Halloween special?
Man, I think they did a great job with the first one. I think they really did focus on making sure that this first Halloween special was going to be great and memorable, and it is still today. It's still with that joke, with the HBO joke, still holds today. So there's things in there that are awesome, and after 30 years, are still funny.
I want to take a look at that joke in like 20 years and see if it's still funny.
Watch it still be relevant.
It's still relevant.
The joke is never not going to be relevant as long as there's some form of streaming television or watching service.
I imagine HBO is still going to be around then.
Yep.
Yeah, Zach, what did you think?
It was all right. The first episode was really good. The second episode was okay, and like I said, the third episode was fucking boring.
I enjoyed it for what it was and what it is. There was some really good jokes in there. It was kind of like watching the first episode of a television series. It's not perfect, but it's like watching a pilot. Like you can see the beginning stages of what it will become in the future, and I can see that on the horizon. Was it perfect? No. And also too, my expectations were a little different. I was genuinely expecting a far more parody rather than horror. Like I thought it was going to be, a lot more making fun of it, which it was, but they were also trying to be suspenseful a little bit more, and I think I wasn't really expecting that, so that probably might be a little bit on me, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for what it was. But again, it's like watching a pilot, and if I'm going to compare it to a pilot of something, it makes me want to watch the next episode.
Yeah.
Is this the only episode that had the 3 directors?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, going forward, each Halloween special just has one director going forward. I think they still use multiple writers for each segment, but we'll see that in the credits when we start the second one.
Nice.
I also thought this was a very solid beginning. Throughout the year, it's not one I really revisit all that much. Like, there are a lot of Halloween specials I revisit throughout the year. This one I kind of really only revisit around October time, like around this time when I'm actually going through and binging all the Halloween specials. But there are 3 very solid stories in my opinion. And like I said earlier, I don't think one really rises above the others clearly, and I don't think one sinks below the others clearly, but we'll be going to some difference of opinion in that shortly. But yeah, I think this is a very good beginning, and I can't wait for you guys to see what's to come. So with that, let's start with what were you guys' picks for the funniest moment of the episode?
HBO.
Yeah.
It to me was one of the like that, and then also the bleeding wall one. Was pretty
It would be between HBO and Don't Throw Your Trash in Our Universe.
That's pretty fucking funny. And then the whole thing too with we've been in a lot of situations, but we have never been in a knife fight before. So
I like the Tombstones, man. The
Tombstones are great too.
It made me realize that The Simpsons is just the original trolls.
Oh yeah, and also it's pure Simpsons. The side gags of The Simpsons are just great.
I love it.
The things that you catch in the background and those type of things, they were great. What was your guys' favorite Tombstone?
Mine was Disco.
Yeah.
Are we talking about both the Indian Burial Ground and the opening, or just
Jesse
the
McCartney?
Paul McCartney.
Or Paul McCartney.
But
that also would be there too.
For the opening, I'd probably go with Casper the Friendly Boy.
Yeah, I was gonna pick that.
And for the Indian Burial Ground, I'd go with Gandhi.
Nice. I think Paul McCartney definitely my favorite with the opening, and then Not So Crazy Horse with the Indian Burial Ground was pretty fucking funny.
Paul McCartney for the intro, and then Toto for the fucking the basement.
That was pretty great.
Just really.
All right. What about the scariest or creepiest moment?
I'm gonna have to edit out this long
creepiest
pause.
moment. I think the creepiest moment was the second segment when it's insinuated the aliens are gonna eat the Simpsons. I think it's just the way that it was set up is pretty creepy.
All right. I'd probably go with there are 2 that stick out in mind. There's that one frame of Maggie laughing with the knife, just because it looks so unnatural but so creepy at the same time. And I also like the final verse of James Earl Jones reading The Raven at the very end. Just a perfect blend of his voice, his tone, the music, the quote-unquote camera angles of the animation. It's between those 2 moments for me.
Yeah.
I think some of the stuff in the first episode with the room going back, especially with Lisa and with Homer, Obviously, the one with Bart was, that was one of the funniest jokes in the episodes. But like with the stuff with Lisa and Bart, Lisa and Homer getting talked to in the middle of the night, that was pretty creepy.
I think it was smart as Simpsons using James Earl Jones as, for all 3 episodes. I think that's really smart.
Yeah.
Just because him alone is adding that element of his voice is already creepy.
He has a phenomenal
He
voice.
has it, dude.
He does.
Man.
He's got
he
it.
does. He does.
Yeah. And he will be returning for another Halloween episode.
Yes.
But it's brief, but I'm not going to spoil what
Yeah.
he does because it's just it's too great.
We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah. Zach, scariest or creepiest moment for you?
I'm just gonna cop out and say Maggie doing the headspin thing.
Headspin?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So this is where I think we're going to get some differences of opinion. I already know Mark and Zach's answer, but what about worst segment of the episode?
Raven.
You guys have no love for culture.
Dude, I just went on a 45-minute rant about Shakespeare's awesome.
I remember no such thing.
As the
be honest,
wise
I
Obi-Wan
can't-
Kenobi would say,
I can't
am
pick,
so uncivilized.
So uncivilized.
I can't pick a worst segment because they're all just different, especially with it being just having different writers, different directors, different takes.
Oh, David, you're so
can't-
political.
Well, it's
That's such a politician answer. Everyone did great.
because
Everyone did great.
You're all winners.
I
You're
guess
all
I
winners.
mean, I don't know, because I enjoyed all 3 of them. I can't say I enjoyed one the least.
Fair enough.
So,
Fair enough. I get you. I get
This
you.
was an
It was
easy
all
one for
about
me.
entertainment, and I walked out watching all 3 satisfied. Like, hey,
I agree with David, but at the same time, I'm not going to cop out like David.
"Damn!"
I'm not saying they were perfect, you son of a. I will murder you on this podcast.
Was the last I finished the word for him. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I guess the.
Oh, now he's not going to cop out though.
It's not really with the episode. It's more of going back to the treehouse. I know they had to set it up, but I guess that was probably the boringest part.
Yeah.
That for me
Yeah,
of
I
the
mean, the
episode.
wraparound's never going to be as good as the stories. That's a given. But
Yeah, but it's-
we're talking about but
still.
when we do these best of and worst of, we're talking the 3.
Yeah, I know.
Because after I think season 5, the 4th Halloween episode, that's the last time they do an actual wraparound.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we don't have much longer to talk about these wraparounds, and of course they always have the introductions. But those aren't the stories.
That's probably the reason why
Yeah.
they took them out to begin, because it wasn't really doing much.
Yeah,
Plus, they could put more
to
time
help.
into the
Yeah,
episodes.
Exactly.
Good point. It's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
The
But yeah, my pick for worst, and like I said, I think all 3 are solid, and it just comes down to technicalities on this one for me, and I gotta go with Hungry Are the Damned as my least favorite.
okay.
Because like it's between Bad Dream House and The Raven. Those 2 are very close to me for best, and because I love the mood of The Raven, and I think Bad Dream House is probably the most complete story. Hungry Are the Damned, and actually I will say my appreciation for Hungry Are the Damned has gone up since talking to the 3 of you. But before, I did kind of feel like once it got to Lisa discovering the cookbook, it's like, we're going to blow dust off of this. Like, I do feel like it kind of lost something in its resolution. So that that's kind of the deciding factor for me choosing it as the worst segment of the 3.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, David, we're going to start with you on this one because we already know your answer. What is your favorite segment of the episode?
The Raven. And because what I described, the mood, and having Earl Jones as the narrator definitely sealed it.
Mark?
Favorite moment.
Favorite segment.
Favorite segment.
Favorite of the 3 stories.
Oh, number 1. My the first one.
Bad Dream House?
Bad Dream House. Yeah, for
What-
sure.
What put it over the top for you?
Honestly, again, because I was expecting more parody,
Mhm.
and that's the one that I got more parody. So
Okay.
I actually got what I was
Yeah.
expecting to get out of this episode. There was far more making fun of horror movies and parody going on in the first one than there were in the other ones for me. So, and also too, I'm not as familiar with that Twilight Zone episode that you were mentioning.
Yeah.
So, but I'm far more familiar with Amityville Horror and Poltergeists, and obviously Psycho. So I knew more about those particular segments. So I was able to understand more of the parody and more of the references that they were talking about. So.
All right. Zach, what's your pick?
The first episode of The House one, absolutely. I keep it simple. I was just entertained throughout that episode for almost the entire episode. Bloody walls, funny jokes, pretty funny resolution.
Potential knife fight with a family.
Potential baby murdering an entire family. I mean, how can you argue with that?
I know she does that in a couple other episodes. Doesn't she shoot Mr. Burns in like a later episode?
Yeah, doesn't she become like a tooth-filled alien or some shit like that?
Yeah,
that does happen.
That's one of the episodes I remember.
That does happen. Yeah.
All right, so we have Bad Dream House, The Raven. It's really close for me, but I'm going to tie it up and go with The Raven.
There we go.
You're playing safe.
Like
even though you picked
I'm agreeing with you, David. But yeah, it's like for me the same reasons that David said. It's just like I love the mood of it. They did take this one much more seriously than the others, and that's something that they haven't really done before since like they adapted an Edgar Allan Poe poem, and for the most part did it very well, and that's very ambitious.
It's very
It's
accurate.
like you just don't see that in any of the other Halloween episodes. So even though I do think overall this is just a solid episode as a whole, it does have that one segment that does something that none of the other episodes do.
Definitely unique.
And James Earl Jones was perfect casting for the narrator.
Yes.
Nobody could ever replace him as reading the Raven ever. And yeah, I think the voice actor for Homer did a really good job too. I love the Bart redesign of the Raven itself. I just think nearly everything worked in it for me, except for like the times that Bart and Lisa would interject. That did kind of feel like they were trying to appeal to people like Zach.
And me.
Bart said it best. Yeah, anything would have been better than nothing happening.
Yeah, they. I'm pretty sure Bart felt the same way that you feel.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Lisa is every A24 fan in existence.
So
We're not getting into A24.
Yeah, Zach, you know the rules.
so
you
in
said
looking,
it in the interview. I could talk about A24 in the podcasts.
So in looking at our picks, Raven is both the best and the worst segment of the episode.
Okay.
Tied for best with Bad Dream House.
That's pretty great.
It's interesting.
We can definitely see that we're split.
Yeah.
The kind of reminds me of when we were talking about It Chapter 2. We're
exactly.
Oh yeah, that's pretty split.
We're pretty fucking split on that.
You know, one of these days I would love to get an answer on that fucking angel section.
Oh yeah, that's definitely there's
of everything that happened in the movie. That's the one thing I want an answer for in the story behind.
I do believe there is a director's commentary. I just haven't had time to go through it yet.
It's a long movie.
I
answers for
imagine they're gonna brush right over that. They're not gonna even mention that.
But I think it's going to be really interesting going forward with these Halloween specials to see where our opinions divide, where we agree on things.
Agreed.
Especially when we get into the later ones. Yeah, I had a really fun time watching this one with you guys. I had a really fun time discussing it, and I can't wait to get to the rest of the other 30 of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's 30 more.
Oh, you're gonna have a fun time.
Get over
You're gonna have a fun time with this, Zach.
Yeah.
You'll at least enjoy it.
Sure.
Yeah. So with that, Zach just shot me the dirtiest look. So yeah, thank you to you, our listeners, for listening to our Midwest Horror Network October 2020 special, Part 1, where we dissect all the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes, starting with this first one. Be sure to listen to our regular podcast, The Nightmares Podcast, which can be found on YouTube, Spotify, and Anchor at Midwest Horror Network or The Nightmares Podcast. You can also find us at Midwest Horror Network on various social medias, such as Instagram, Facebook, YouTube and Slasher.
Please give us a like, share, and
Give
subscribe.
us a like, share, subscribe, and happy October 1st.